Hi students, Aaron here. Today we'll be covering rendering and modeling, and the tools we'll be using are SketchUp and Lumion. So just a few things about rendering. The world of rendering is incredibly vast. There are so many different things going on, different softwares, plugins. Just to keep things simple, we'll be using Lumion View today, which is a very boiled down version, and we'll be focusing on post-processing. I just want you to know that there are several other software out there, and Lumion is just one, and we're barely scratching the surface with this, but I wanted to give us an introduction to this as well. So just a few things in this module. I'll cover all the parts, so go ahead, sit back, relax, and watch this video for its full length before starting, and get an idea of what to expect. If you have any questions, go ahead and shoot me a message, and I'll see you in the first part. Thanks. Hi students, Aaron here. Welcome back. We'll be covering each part in this series, so please make sure to pay attention and go through each section when appropriate. So first thing here I want to show you is our model overview or lecture notes. So I have these for you just in case you need them. They're super helpful. Just a few things I want to point out is that these times I will put in when I finish the video, when I know when the times are for each section, just so if you need to go back and review something you can. But just to cover what we're doing in this video is I'm going over the basic software we're using here, okay? And then in the second part, we'll actually be making a pavilion in SketchUp, and I'll provide the template file, and then we'll be mocking up a rendering, and then finally we'll be post-processing. So let's waste no time and let's get into it. Okay, so first thing I want to draw your attention to is the different software that we're using in this module. I'll keep this quick and simple. Trimble, you'll have to make an account with Trimble. Trimble is tied to SketchUp, and that will give you access to what's called the 3D warehouse. And the 3D warehouse within SketchUp houses lots of free items, such as Entourage, and that may include things like plants, cars, trees, people, dogs, really anything that you could want to put in a rendering, you can get that 3D modeled for free. So Trimble is a great resource. So please go ahead and scroll down and use the link I have in the show notes, and that will allow you to create a Trimble account by clicking this link here. And then a few other things we're using. Of course, we're using SketchUp. SketchUp is a robust three-dimensional modeling software popular in architecture and industrial design. It's also often used by interior designers. And SketchUp's known for its intuitiveness and its approach to design. It's very easy, and it follows what's called a push-pull approach, meaning that items can simply be extended up to stretch and give volume. And we'll explore that as we move forward. And then Lumion View is a free plugin that you'll need to download. And then finally, we'll be using Adobe Photoshop, and that will be used for what's called post-processing, and post-processing is often what is used on renderings after they have gone through the rendering process. And Lumion View is what we call a rendering tool, and this rendering tool will add things like shadow, light, dimension, shade, and it does a very good job of doing this and keeps it very simple. However, it's always best practice to adjust a few things in Photoshop. You may wish to add additional entourage or whatever you may do as adjusting hue, saturation, lightness, darkness, whatever it entails, you can do it in Photoshop. So that's what part one entails, and I have all the links down here, and a few things that are super important I want to review with you is that this module will have to be completed in the computer lab on campus unless you have access to SketchUp on your personal computer, which can be quite tricky. So SketchUp can be expensive, and it's best practice to use 301B, that's our architecture computer lab here on the Taylorsville campus of Salt Lake Community College. So please make sure you're completing that there. SketchUp is already installed. However, you will need to download Lumion View. And to do that, you'll have to make a Trimble account. Okay, and just a few things down here. So once you've created your Trimble account, go ahead and stay logged in and keep that open in a tab. Then second, I'd like you to download a plugin called Lumion View in LiveSync. So you may be asking yourself what a plugin is. A plugin is simply a small program that can be attached to SketchUp and used within the program. And you can download that plugin here. So if I right-click this plugin and open in a new tab, it'll open in what's called the SketchUp Extension Warehouse, and this is super important. You'll log in with your Trimble credentials, and then down below you'll hit download. And this part is super vital, so please make sure to pay attention. If you are in our computer lab, you will need permission to download this. You're welcome to go to the lab aides on duty. They include but may not be limited to Alan and Sam. And you can also ask your professor, Aaron. Aaron's office is in 307D, and he is more than happy to get you the credentials to log into this. You simply just need an admin to give you permission to download this. And if you're not familiar with where our lab aids are located, they are just outside of the interior design lab. Similar to how we have a little vestibule in front of our lab, there's one in front of the interior design lab. And you can simply turn to the left and open that door or knock on it. Whoever's in there will be more than happy to help you. So please make sure to do that. That's vital for your success in this module. Okay, and then third, you'll need to download that plugin into SketchUp. And to do so, you'll just follow a few steps. And I actually have those steps listed on the first module, or the first step of the module. So if you go to the next page in the module, I will mention everything you need to do to download that SketchUp, or plugin, and get that to work. So once you have that extension downloaded, I also put it here as well. If you want to download it directly off of Canvas, you're more than welcome to do that instead of going on the SketchUp warehouse. However, I wanted to show you the whole process. We'll open SketchUp, go to Extensions, Extension Manager, Install Extension, and then you select your plugin called Lumion Plugins for SketchUp, and then that's likely in your Downloads folder, and then you're good to go. Okay, so that is the first step here. And then if you open up your extensions manager in SketchUp, it'll be located right on the top. It'll say Lumion Plugins for SketchUp, and it should say enabled. If you have any questions on that, please shoot me a message. I know this is like drinking from a fire hose, so much information. If you need anything, please shoot me a message and go ahead and rewind as needed. Thank you. Hello and welcome to part 2 of the module. Here we'll be talking about our pavilion design. So the first thing you'll do is you'll download your SketchUp model, and just simply do that by clicking on Canvas, and then we'll let that download for a second and then we'll open that. So a few things I want to talk about here is that we're designing a pavilion that goes into the park that we've been working on all semester. So something important to remember here is think about where you want to place this item. We don't necessarily have to decide now. However, what I'd like you to do is think about where this goes on your site, because that may affect the design you choose. So if we scroll around and look at this right here, we can see that I developed a whole system of different modular items that can be used to create a design. Okay, and these will have to be pushed and pulled to achieve the desired effect of it looking like columns in a roof. So we will have to pull on each one and piece them together. So you are limited to 60 pieces minimum, 75 pieces maximum. So please make sure you're adhering to that. If you ever wonder how many you have selected at once, you can simply just highlight all and it will tell you how many components you have. So if I were to use one of every single piece out here, you'll see that I have 64 pieces. You can use as many or as little varieties as you'd like. However, as a whole, you need to have a minimum of 60 pieces, maximum of 75 pieces. And so what I want to show you here in SketchUp is that these lines I have down here, these are what's called my axes. All right, so I have my X, Y, and Z axis, and that represents the lateral, sideways, and vertical axes within SketchUp that really drive this program home and help you orient yourself. Okay, so those are our axes, and then here we have different items I drew with the pen tool, and then once you draw something with the pen tool, it closes and it gets this little fill, and that little fill means that the object, it isn't solid, however, but if I were to push and pull on that, I would be able to get some mass, and we'll start that shortly. Okay, so if I zoom in, you'll see that fill there, all right? And what we'll do is that we are going to start the process of designing, okay, our pavilion. So don't spend too much time on making this a perfect pavilion. One thing I want you to remember is that these right here are roof pieces that you can put in between your columns. If I were to use pieces with columns, it would really clutter up the whole entire pavilion. So I want you to look at the examples I have on Canvas. I have plenty of pictures that show you my thought process and what I went through, but I want to show you that this is actually scaled. So if I take my pencil tool, and I draw a little line, it'll tell me how long that is. And that's roughly 12.5 feet. Okay, so this is to scale, and I have a little person here that helps as well. So just to give you a little tour, up here I have my different tools, and depending on how SketchUp opens on your machine, and you may be on a PC, you may have more or less tools shown. And to edit the tools shown, simply click on Tools here, and you can select additional if needed. And if you'd like to edit your tools shown, you are more than welcome to go to Windows and play around. okay? And then view also gives you some more options as well. So play around with that as needed. This program is pretty simple, so I'm only going to teach you a few tools that we'll need for this process. But first and foremost, we need to add depth to this item. So if I double click into this group here, you can see the little sand texture populated on the white area. To raise that up, I'll simply click the push-pull tool, and then I will pull on that, and I'll type 8, and then I'll use the quotation mark to represent inches. And if you see there, I raised it up 8 inches. And that gives it nice depth, almost as if it were dimensional lumber. And then this roof piece here, I simply can do that by clicking up and then hit 8 on my keyboard, and then also the quotation mark after that 8. Okay, so you don't have to do this to all the pieces. It's only the pieces you want, all right? And then what we'll do next is we'll rotate this. So we'll use what's called the rotation tool. And do you see here, if I hover on different elements of this, it moves around. Do you see that? We want to flip it so it's not on its side. So just click once and then click again, and it should kind of snap for you. And then after that, I can click my plus arrow, and that plus arrow will get me out of that rotation mode. Okay, and I am just moving around by using the scroll wheel on my mouse, and we have those in the computer lab. Okay, and then next what I'll do is I will just click this button here. Okay, and if I want to copy and paste that, I can do Control-C, Control-V, all right? And I can just start to paste that over and over and over. If I make a mistake, I can simply just undo. Okay, so this is a very simple tutorial on SketchUp. We're not getting into the full capacity of SketchUp. We're just really touching on a few basic things. So just a few things I want to touch on to really educate you on SketchUp is that the main point of this program is to model things three-dimensionally quickly. Speed is the biggest thing here in SketchUp. And if you click here, you'll notice that this is called a component. And please don't do this, but this is what a component does. If I were to double click into that component and start editing, let's say push-pull, it edits everything that's a component within that same family. Okay, so anything that's the same as this little beam here, this little roof condition, it will be changed with it. Okay, so that's why we have components. It keeps consistency throughout. All right. And then keep in mind, for your pavilion, you'll have a minimum of 60 pieces, maximum of 75, and you'll go ahead and design one to your heart's content. All right, and then most importantly, when you're done, make sure to click on the 3D warehouse right here, and then you'll be able to search for a picnic table, and then you can also search for a tree. So you'll need to put in 3 trees. They can be the same tree, and then you'll need to do a picnic table. So let me show you just a picnic table. So if I type in picnic table here, don't pick the first one you see, have some fun. Okay, find one that's cool, but I'll load directly into my SketchUp model. And you can see here, and I can start to populate that. But do you notice here, my columns are a little too close to that. So be critical about having enough circulation space and making sure your pavilion's not super squishy. So have fun with this. Keep in mind a few things you'll need to know as doing this. When doing this is that you may have to click the shift key while you're rotating around with the little wheel that's on your mouse. Okay, so the little wheel that your pointer finger rests on, you may have to click shift on your computer to zoom around like this. All right, or you simply might be able to just click the little wheel thing and push it into your mouse and move around like this. So play around, don't get frustrated. It takes a little bit. It's like learning how to walk. Okay, so you can definitely do it, but this really is the second part of this. So please make sure to look at the module requirements. I do require a few images you need to export here, and some things that I want to show you before we do that is I forgot to show you the move tool. So the move tool is right here, and you just simply can move like that. Click and move, click and move. And then if you're done, simply hit escape on your keyboard. All right, we have our measuring tape here as well, and then our rotation tool, and then our push-pull tool. Those are really the trio here that you'll be using. If you need other tools, you're more than welcome to explore around or shoot me a message or meet me at my office, and I'm more than happy to explain things to you. Okay, so let's learn how to export a view. So if I have a view I like, what I'll do is I'll go to File, Export, 2D graphic. Wait for that to load, and then I can export as a JPEG, and I can save that to my desktop. So that's something to keep in mind. Please don't take screenshots if you ever need to take an image of what's going on here. I prefer you do the file export route. Okay. And then just one thing that I want to make sure that we have is what's called scenes. So I go to Window, Scenes, okay, and then I will create a new scene. So it's super important for these scenes that I just get down to eye level. And what a scene does is it saves your view and position within SketchUp. So right here, if I were to make a scene with this little hipster guy with his little hat and iced coffee, I would just hit plus. Okay, and I can hit create scene. So if I were to zoom around, so watch this, but I click here, I can always come back. So again, the purpose of a scene in that it locks your space that you are working in and makes sure that you have a consistent angle. All right, so that does it for part 2. Like I said, please go ahead and rewind. This can be quite tricky, so take your time, and I'm more than happy to meet with you during office hours. I have about 10 to 12 office hours a week, and I can walk you through anything you need help with. All right, and I'll see you in the next part. Okay, so we're at the point in the module where it's time to render. And the first thing we'll do here is we want to click on Extensions, Extension Manager, and double check that we have Lumion installed. And if we don't, you'll want to hit Install Extension, and then you'll go ahead and navigate to your Downloads folder, and then you'll select the plugin download. And we just want to double check that it says Enabled, which is great. Perfect. All right. So once we have that, what I'll do next is I want to launch that. And to do that, I can do a few things, okay? So I'll just exit out of this first, and then what I'll do is I will do Lumion View, just up here, Start Lumion View, okay? And just give that a second to render. It may take a minute, and it can also be quite taxing on your computer. Mine doesn't do that well with it. I have to use the computers on campus. But once you're in here, please play around with the settings up here in the top left. You can play with the sky and the sun. Just make something simple and then export that when you're done. All right, we don't need anything too fancy here. But what Lumion View will ask you to do is it may ask you to create a Lumion account with your student email. And to do that, just simply hit create an account and you can log on through Lumion. Okay, I'll be honest here, this is way too much for my computer, so just lesson learned, you'll have to be in the lab, but there really isn't much besides these few buttons here, okay? So we have our sun and light here that you can adjust, and then your export button. So this window would go away and you'd be able to log in, create an account with your student email, all right? It's super simple. I'm going to exit out of here before my computer crashes, but I want to show you just one more thing before we move on to the next part, is that we need to apply what's called materials to our items. And the first thing that we'll do here is we'll click on the paint bucket tool, all right? And then we can just start applying color if we want, just like this, okay? Any color really under the sun. But I encourage you to potentially take a different approach here. All right, instead of using materials like that, I would suggest using like actual materials that are in SketchUp. Okay, as a reminder, to get to that materials palette, you'll simply click Windows Materials, and then you can navigate to this little brick here, and you can select different materials. So let's try, for example, patterns. We'll let that load, but if I were to do something like this, and then apply that texture, it would show. So you need at least 2 different textures for this portion of the module, so go ahead and play around with that, and let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you in the next part. All right, students, and welcome to part 4. We will be taking the image that we exported out of our rendering software in SketchUp, and we will be post-processing that in Photoshop. So open that image up in Photoshop. It should be something like this with these proportions. If you have an option to export it, try your best to do the higher quality option. So just a few things I want to tell you here is that this is very intentional, and this is by design. This is meant to be challenging, and I will not be walking you through every step because we we have covered all of those steps and skills within our collage. So you actually should be good to go and have fun on this. And a few things I want to tell you is that there are very specific instructions for this. You are to mimic the same exact style of rendering, not the same style of pavilion. That is up to you, okay? The materials, colors, that is your choice. However, when it comes to stylistically how I've done this, I want you to mimic this to a T. Do your best, okay? And each item here, I have a task I have for you in Photoshop. So go ahead and start doing this, and you may have to go back to our module on collages and relearn how to mask if you don't know how to do that. Okay, that'll be super important for your success here, so start early. And a few things I want to show you that will help you is pay attention to the little details. Okay, when I say add bush foliage and foreground on left, adjust brightness, contrast, hue with clipping mask, I darken to this. When things are in the foreground, we want them to be darker. That's how our eyes perceive them. And when things are further away, we want them to be a little lighter. And these people here, I even added a slight blur on, all right? And you can see here, add group and distance, blur slightly. So some of these are skills that we did prior, some are not. Really, the only new one here may be blur, and that can be done through just the tools on the top. You can go to image filter, and then you can blur. Okay, and then here you'll have to add text as well, and you can use the transform tool to get that into perspective if needed and add a stroke. And so we've been doing these things all semester. My online class, you've maybe seen this once or twice in the collage video that we did, but I need you to mimic this, all right? Do your best. I know it's going to be hard, but I am giving you extra time on this. If you have any questions, I am only one message away, and I'm more than happy to meet with you in person or on Zoom. All right, good luck with this project. I know it's a big task, but you can do it. If you need anything, go ahead and reach out.